Hi, Tim.
Hey,
George.
hey, George.
Oh my God, you've turned into Jesus.
Oh my. Yes, he has.
Let's do. What would it be like if you were a Roman soldier meeting Jesus at the cross?
I think we've all done that one before.
Yeah.
I saw that movie. I liked it.
Right.
But,
First of all, I'd like to point out that John has books behind him. Tim has a guitar, but I have a full fucking bar.
there we
Well,
go.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
John, were you the Coen's whisperer? Because when I look back, and we're having to kind of reconstitute the 20 years ago when you guys did this picture, you had worked with them, but am I correct? Tim and George had not worked with the Coens yet?
Tim might have done something with them. I had not worked with them at all. But Tim, didn't you do some readings or some things with them?
No, no. It was the first time I'd worked with them. I'd auditioned for Big Lebowski.
How'd that go?
It didn't go well. Phil Hoffman mopped the floor with me.
Well, there it is.
And John, you had been down that, been on that rodeo before. Did you tell the other Soggy Bottom boys anything about working with these guys?
Well, they had started. They were there before I arrived. So they were already in the first week of craziness there. So no. So
John did tell me, don't waste a moment of this, which was great advice.
Yeah. So.
And again, you know, going back 20 years, when each of you read the script, of course, the Coens were well established by then. It wasn't like, you know, they just started and nobody knew who they were. But the script is fun and different. What was your reaction? And then what was the reaction of the people who you work with and help with your careers?
You mean agents?
Yeah, those guys.
I don't know. Tim, what do you think? I found that the first time I read it, I couldn't believe my luck and that I was going to get to play a part. I wasn't all that familiar with the Odyssey, so I hadn't put all that together, but I was very familiar with Sullivan's Travels. So when the title was "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" I laughed out loud. And I just thought, you know, the idea of, you know, these three roving idiots sort of going through a whole film, you know, just I couldn't believe my luck that I was going to get to do a film. You know, Lebowski had just come out. I think Fargo was a film just before it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, these guys are, if you look at sort of the history of how directors' careers go, most directors, even the best of them, have, you know, 10, 15, sometimes 20-year careers, and then things fall off. And these guys just don't fail. They just keep doing really interesting work. And so I just felt really lucky. I don't know if Tim felt the same way.
Well, I was directing a movie in South Carolina, and I remember driving to work one morning, and George had just signed on. And it said, the radio, it said, George Clooney is going to be doing the next Coen Brothers film, which is based on the Odyssey. And I thought, man, I would just do anything to play a day on that. But I knew Joel and Ethan at that point. We were, I guess, somewhere between acquaintances and friends. And I said, but I'm not going to abuse the relationship and ask. So I can't wait to see that, whatever it's going to be. And then Joel sent me the script about 3 weeks later while I was on set shooting that movie. And he said, I want your advice. and I read it and loved it. And I wondered, well, what could he possibly need to know from me? And then he said, would you play Delmar? And I honestly couldn't believe it. And I was first and foremost excited to work with them and to get to play a part in one of their movies, which was going to be a lot more than a day. But also to act alongside George and John and John Goodman. I just couldn't believe it. So I was really excited. And then another piece of advice John gave me, or he actually he informed me of it as fact, and it's true. He said, as good as the scripts are, the movies are even better.
Well, yeah, well put.
I think we all felt, you know, I mean, Tim and I both didn't have the experience of working with the Coens before, but, you know, we'd watched John do batshit crazy things with them also. So the idea that we were going to get to be chained next to, you know, John Turturro was a pretty exciting thing all the way around. And John made it easy because, you know, it can be intimidating. And John showed up and just made it, you know, fun from the very beginning. So it sort of took all of the nerves away pretty quickly.
Well, I think it was a great group of people, and I think.
And John, you're coming to us from Brooklyn, right? Did you say that's where you are today?
Yes.
And I was looking, and I see that, you know, George's roots are Ohio, and Tim's are Oklahoma. You know, you're the odd man out of the Soggy Bottom Boys. Pete's history is a little mysterious.
I'm actually Southern Italian, so that
Yeah,
a lot of similarities between.
it's true.
So, yeah, it is true, actually.
How far south?
Sicily.
Sicily, yeah.
And Puglia. Yeah.
And Puglia. Oh,
Yeah.
great. I get to mention my wife, who is Sicilian. Okay. Here's a classic writer, journalist, guy who hasn't been on as many sets as you guys question. Most of the time, the three of you are on screen together. There are scenes where George is with Holly and you're not together, but you're all together a lot. Did you guys work out what you were doing together, the Coens? How does that camaraderie and that trio come together? You're shaking your head, John.
Oh, no, I think, you know, if the one person's not aboard, I'm sure everyone will agree that messes up everyone, you know, but if you all work together and, you know, I think the ball just was passed back and forth and we understood our parts, and Joel and Ethan, you know, create a nice environment for that
Locked up there.
to happen.
You know,
Some directors.
what people don't understand about Joel and Ethan is that, you know, they work really, really, really fast. They do one take if they've got it. They don't really rehearse. The script really doesn't change from the minute you get it to the minute you shoot. Mm-hmm. So you could learn your lines, sort of lock in, and then you just look to your left and right, and there's, you know, John and Tim, and we were all kind of, you know, gauging each other for how far we wanted to take things, because, you know, this is not a subtle film. I mean, when John, when you do that bit where you're like, and bite your hand, to this day, every time I see it, I just start laughing, just because I remember the first time you did it, and you like looked around and said, too much. And we were like,
I think Ethan showed me that exactly. I think that was, I have to give that to Ethan. He said,
oh, really?
Yeah, I think it was Ethan. Yeah.
I would say I had the easiest time of it because I couldn't have been, I was only known as an actor off Broadway and in some very abstruse projects off Broadway. So I mean, that John and George were so incredibly generous and gracious and kind and, you know, inclusive and just, you know, it's not an overstatement to say I felt like they allowed me to be in their presence. It was just, so I every day was just fantastic. And the generosity coming from these guys was absolutely phenomenal.
I got to throw baseball with your son, you know, I mean, we we're in Jackson, Mississippi, you know, and all around the South. And I think we really just sort of, the fun part was there was never anything except encouragement on trying stuff. Don't you think?
Yeah.
I think you see it in the spirit of the film.
Yeah.
I remember the very first day of working, and you know, you got to remember, I'm coming off of ER, and then I'd done a couple of movies and they bombed. So there was all this, you know, can he survive the move from TV to film? And the very first day we're shooting, doing the scene where John Goodman, who I had done a series with years earlier, so I knew John, takes a branch and beats my teeth out, while I'm eating corn. And I remember I did the first take, and Joel and Ethan came over, and they go, and I was playing him like a, idiot, like a total moron. And Joel came over and goes, "Just remember, you're the smartest guy in the room, always." And I was like, oh. And then from then on, it was, well, apparently you fellas don't, and then it was, and from that moment on, it was kind of like, and, is it okay if I fill my mouth full of corn and spit it out? Yeah, spit corn. It's funny.
Which leads me inevitably to my big question of the day, which is choreography. I just watched the movie again, and who's the choreographer of the Soggy Mountain Boys in that last scene?
John Turturro. What John and I are doing, it was Turturro. And what George is doing, it was George, right?
Yeah, remember they brought a choreographer, and they said, and the guy's like, "Okay, here's what we're gonna do." And I was like, "Well, I'm from Kentucky, and I got a move I like." And they did it. And the guy was so pissed off.
Yeah, George is really good, I have to say, man.
And then you guys
dance, George, I was like, man.
And you guys doing your knee crossing move like you're dancing, it just killed me.
Well, John's no offense, George, you've got some moves there, but John, you could have been a dancer.
I started too late.
Yeah, but he said, "All right, Tim, just trust me on this." And I have never had more fun on a day of a movie and laughed so hard as that. And it was just John and me in the back. We were background players to George doing that dancing.
And Charlie Durning jumping up on stage.
Wow.
And, and he's a real hoofer.
Yeah.
And he's like doing his dance, help me up with the goddamn stage. And I loved that man so much. He was so much fun.
Incredible man. Was there music on the set of this movie? Because again, I just watched it, and there's music wall to wall in the finished film. But when you were making the film, were you surrounded by music, or that's just not the feeling of what was going on there?
I always had music playing from morning to night in my in my area, and a lot of Doc Watson, and I was a big Gillian Welch fan.
She was there.
Then she ended up in the movie, so then obviously all the music that's on screen, there were pre-records, and so we were listening to those.
Remember some nights they'd be just in the hotel room, be like Gillian and T-Bone and you guys, and we'd all be sitting there and they'd be singing and playing the guitar. And I mean, that was a really fun, exciting time around.
Yeah, well, we were watching the NBA All-Star game in George's room.
Yeah.
And it wasn't clear whether I was going to get to sing in the jailhouse now. And Joel and Ethan didn't want to say no to me. And so they dispatched T-Bone to just casually give me an audition. And it happened without my even knowing it, in George's room during a commercial on watching the NBA All-Star game. And T-Bone said, "Well, hey, man, should we just try Jailhouse and kind of fool around?" And then the next day, I learned that had been my audition, and I was going to get to play. Wow. I don't know, maybe you knew, George.
No, I didn't know shit. Are you kidding? I thought I was going to be singing "Man of Constant Sorrow" until we got to the recording studio. They assumed I could sing because my aunt was Rosemary Clooney, and I assumed I could sing. And then we got in there, and they're behind the glass desk, and it's T-Bone and Joel and Ethan, and I do my first, and I really worked hard at it, and then I sang it. And I look up, and no one will look up. No one looks. Everybody's looking down at the ground like this and shaking their head. And I I looked like, huh? And they're like, yeah, come on in, let's listen to it. And they thought if I listened to it, I would understand. And I'm listening to it, and it literally sounds like a cat caught in the wheel well of a truck driving down the street. And but I know, I also know they're sort of screwed too, because what happens if I think it's great? So I went, I think it's great. And then you just saw all of them like, oh. And then I said, I get your guy in here. And they brought in Dan Tominski, and he sang it for me. It was pretty humiliating.
I'm guessing it's not coincidental that right now when we're talking, there are guitars behind you. Would you say, the three of you, would you say that Tim is the most musically committed of the trio?
I don't know. Tim, are you?
I'm not the most musically committed of the trio. I think we're all musically committed. And I have to say, before Buster Scruggs, I did not know how to play the guitar.
Really?
So I spent 6 months learning every day. I'm a recent convert, and those are not staged there. They actually just sit in my office because I play my farmer chords when I take breaks.
And this alcohol is not.
But George had more of had a higher bar to hit than I did, because in the movie, Jailhouse is not meant to take the country by storm. It's just a throwaway.
That was the whole thing. That's otherwise.
It was a hard song to sing, I will say. But you guys were the funniest with the yodeling.
Well, the yodeling wasn't in originally, because I learned how to play your song in the Jailhouse now, or maybe both songs, on a mandolin. I kept practicing and practicing and practicing. And I had one of the songs pretty decently, and then they said, that's out. And it was like a day before. I said, I don't do the mandolin. They said, no, you're gonna yodel. And I was like, I can't yodel. I said, I don't know how to. You said, you're just fake yodeling. And yeah, and that was out all those months of learning how to play the mandolin on those two, songs. And
I was supposed to play the upright bass before I was going to sing, because they thought it would be so funny for this.
right.
I mean, I'm tiny, and they thought it would be funny if this bass twice my size, if I had to manage that.
Right.
And I took lessons too.
So they changed their minds.
Out the window. Can you venture a guess, because so many people have seen the movie fueled this album that T-Bone produced that sold like 10 million records,
Wow.
200 million listens on Spotify for the album. Which of you gets requests to sing songs from the movie the most? George, do people expect you to sing Man of Constant Sorrow?
No, they don't. It was funny though. Early on, people didn't really. I was in Montreal when it won Album of the Year. It beat like U2 and it won Album of the Year. And I remember in the Montreal paper it said, like, because I was shooting there, it's like George Clooney wins Album of the Year. And I was like, yeah, that's it. No, nobody. I can say this. I think I'm pretty sure in my lifetime, no one has ever asked me to sing that song.
That's actually, I find that unbelievable, but
that's true.
And it's not possible to ask you right.
These guys, yeah, good idea. These guys, they actually sang. Tim really sang in the Jailhouse Now, and it's actually beautiful in it. So, by the way, because the album made so much money, Tim was paid better than any of us by far.
Very good. That's a good variety
George,
story.
George, I want to go ahead and my payment for royalties were considerable, and they were multiples of what I was paid to do the movie, but I don't think it reached your salary.
I bet you it did. That movie, remember, now wasn't there, now this is, I know that it's accurate, but it's a little off, but the opening song, the Chain Gang song, was a real Chain Gang song.
Yes, it's an Alan Lomax.
And they had to go find the guy who sang it, who is since out of prison. and gave him a rather large check that he didn't know was coming. That's what T-Bone told me.
Yeah.
Have you heard that story?
Yeah.
That must be a pretty amazing check to get.
Wow. Yeah.
Incredible story. And George, you had read the Odyssey. Had everybody on this read the Odyssey? Because this seems like homework that would be very hard to figure out. John, had you read the Odyssey before you made it?
I had read it because when I was in drama school, we did an adaptation of it, and you know, I also saw those cheesy movies with Kirk Douglas playing Ulysses, not Odysseus. So I kind of know, and that was sort of a joke. Joel and Ethan would always laugh about all these kind of Sandal movies that George got to do one of them actually. So that I had, yeah.
And Tim, you mentioned that you read that the Coens were going to adapt Odyssey. Did you assume it was going to be a Sword and Sandals movie?
No. I knew it was Depression era and that there was going to be a music component.
And how familiar were any of the three of you with the music that winds up in the movie, the what is now called Americana? I mean, the movie kind of created the Americana genre of music as a thing that people track, and there are stations and there's Spotify lists.
Well,
but in 2000, 20 years ago, how much did any of you listen to this roots music?
Tim and I grew up, I mean, you say Ohio, but I really grew up in Kentucky. So I grew up, I mean, I knew Ralph Stanley. I knew, I grew up with Porter Wagner and listening to a lot of old country music. Old-timey stuff I'm a little old for the old-timey. I mean, I'm a little young for the old-timey stuff to really seeped in, except for some of the classics. Maybe Tim, maybe you had a little more of a introduction to it.
This is going to sound like very, it's true. There was not a single group that appeared in this movie, and I don't think a single song that I didn't know.
Wow.
I was obsessed with it, which was lucky for me because the singing Jailhouse was familiar. In fact, when they said, you're going to be playing, we're going to, one of the songs is in the Jailhouse, and if you want to sing, maybe you could sing that. And I said, I mean, this is true, and I can derogate myself all day. So trust me, I'm not. But this is just true. I knew so many versions of that song. I had to ask which one because I was that obsessed with this music.
Great music. That's the Bristol Big Bang, Jimmy Rogers all the way back, which. I hope we were all able to get together in a few years to celebrate the centennial of that. John,
Yeah.
Did you know the music at all, John, or not?
I knew Ralph Stanley, and I like Alan Lomax because he's covered a lot of different countries and different cultures. So I listened to a lot of different songs in different languages. So a few of them I had heard, but I didn't really know a bunch of them. And once I heard it, that's what I played all the time.
He knew the version. He knew the version by the Ramones.
By the Ramones, I knew. No,
well,
but
actually,
Ralph Stanley is somebody I was aware of, and Man Constant Sorrow. Yes, I had heard that song. But
well, that song. The first time I heard that song, it was done by a kid who was playing Greenwich Village. New York. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's my version. So. George, you threw off one of my questions here because I was going to ask you if you knew any actors who sleep with a hairnet. And now I want to ask you if you knew any country stars because you mentioned Porter Wagner.
Well, he certainly had a hairnet. Yeah, the hairnet was pretty, all the stuff, all the vanity stuff made me laugh a lot because there was every movie I've done with him, there's always some, in Intolerable Cruelty was my teeth. There's always some like crazy, insane vanity that they made me make fun of. But the hairnet one made me laugh a lot because I still have cans of Dapper Dan around here somewhere.
I was going to ask you if there are any Dapper Dan pomade products in your house.
Yeah, look at that. See, there's one right there. That's a big can.
Oh my God!
From the premiere party.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, one last question for you, because I promised I would wrap this up in a half hour or so.
May I just
You know,
may I just say
Yep.
really quickly that it's funny that Joel and Ethan always write these vanities for George's characters, because he truly is, for as impeccably handsome as he is, one of the least vain people I've ever met in my life.
Fastest makeup,
Amazing.
job ever. Never seen anything like it in my
Rub
life.
dirt on my face and go.
It goes like this. I'm ready to go.
And then he took a pen and he would fill in the bald spots in his beard with a ballpoint pen.
Me and Tim would be like, holy moly, you know, it's almost like the movie. And George would come out looking, you know, like, right on the trail. Yeah.
Well, you know, years of cutting my own hair.
Yeah.
in Kentucky.
Well, yeah. By the way, I still cut my own hair because we're in lockdown. So you know, it all works out.
I thought Christoph had done that.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I have to say though, you know, because you're trying to wrap it all up, and the three of us were really enjoying this, you know, a lot. This was a blast, man. This was a blast. There are moments in this movie that I see, and instead of seeing it as a movie, I remember the moments. I remember, you know, when we first came upon the sirens and how funny that was. I remember, you know, there's just so yeah, but there was just so many things. That he's a toad, and that literally we would finish and we could barely get through the take without just howling laughing, and the boys weren't helping because they're sitting off of the monitor like the whole time. And you know, so it's not all that often that all of the joy that you have off screen plays on screen. And so that's what makes this one so special, I think, to all of us, is that it was, you know, it was every bit as joyful making it as it is watching it. And that's, I think, rare, you know.
You know, you had mentioned an event where you guys were all in a room and you were playing music and music on the set. Was there a rap party for this thing? Because again, in the mind of the person watching the movie, you think that last scene in the movie feels like the rap party. We probably didn't shoot that as the last scene in the movie, but was there a rap, or was there a festival? This went to Cannes, didn't it? It was in Cannes Festival.
Yeah, imagine that in south of France with everybody going like this and clapping to Man of Constant Sorrow. Yeah, Cannes was fun.
The last sequence was towards the end, right?
The last scene was the last scene that we shot was in the water.
Yeah.
Water, but the performance at the end was towards the end of the shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you remember we had a rap party, and there was a kid there that was a driver, and he'd had his wife was in an accident or something, and we would do dollar days on the set. You remember this? And we would always, the whole crew would put in like $5 or something, and then you sign your name on the money, and at the end you draw it out. We do it every weekend. We all put some cash in, and I remember this so specifically because there's something important people don't always understand about sets and how they really are a family in a way. And this guy was broke, and you know, needed some money. It was something I think for his wife, and so everybody in the crew signed his name to the money, and we put in, and we got it up to like $11,000, and it was at the rap party, and we, you know, and every week we did a dollar day, and you'd make like $1,100 or something. But this is a huge amount of money, and he called his name, and he wins, and of course he couldn't believe it because he needed it the most. And then watching him at the rap party, when he opened it up and on every $20 bill and $100 bill, he saw his name, and he just started crying, you know. And I just remember that so well, thinking that people don't understand necessarily, particularly when you go away on location, how much the crew and every part of it this is all a family. And when it works well, it really works well. And it was such a beautiful moment. I'll always remember that as something incredible, proud to be part of.
Yeah. John and Tim, if, any other thoughts about this shoot or, you know, Mississippi or the music that comes to mind? How long were you guys in Mississippi shooting?
11 weeks.
So I think it was 7 in Mississippi, and then
When we went to
a bit
LA,
longer, and then 3 weeks in LA.
That's right.
10 weeks. Yeah.
I'll go second to, you know, I'll just say, look, this was my, I mean, a career doesn't happen because of one movie, but often there's one moment, one project that sort of shifts everything. And this was it for me. And I just owe so much to Joel and Ethan, but also to John and George, who allowed me in so graciously and were so much fun to be around. And you know, I'm just incredibly grateful to these two guys, really as much as I am to Joel and Ethan, because of the trio that we got to form and because I was allowed to be a part of it.
Sure fun.
John, last words?
For me, I think it was a privilege, you know, working with George, working with Tim, John. I don't take that stuff for granted. I think it's rare, like George says, when everybody works together and the whole is bigger, you know, than who you are. And it's been great to watch George go on to do all wonderful things, and Tim also. And it just, when I see the film now, I like it better. And that's always the case. And
That's the case with a lot of their films, isn't it? Their films get better with age.
yeah.
Remember, guys, remember when we did it at we went to Lincoln Center and showed it not that long?
It was fantastic.
Wasn't that a great night? It just felt like, you know, because it's funny. I remember when this film first came out, I remember Entertainment Weekly, just before we did press, wrote a review that said it's the worst film of the year. And to say, and because it's a new year, a new decade, it's the worst film of the decade. And because it's a new century, it's the worst film of the century. And we were like, wow, that's pretty angry.
Yeah, and that, I mean, a lot of critics, even if it wasn't as scathing as that, they just didn't appreciate it or get
It wasn't Fargo. It was the, you know, it was it's them goofing off again. And the fun part is, it also reminds you that, you know, time kind of figures things out.
Yes,
a little bit.
yes.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I've taken to saying that time is the enemy of hype and the friend of art. And I think,
Enemy of height, yes.
you know, this is a great example because, like I said, I just watched the movie again. I hadn't seen it in a long time. I think I came to it very objectively, and it's just beautiful. George, I was actually shocked to hear what you were just saying. I didn't remember that the reviews were that tough.
not all of them. We had some good reviews too, but that there was such a that they felt so betrayed by the Coen brothers for doing something so light after doing Fargo. You know, it was like, how dare you? And for us, we were like, I mean, isn't the idea you're supposed to get lost for an hour and a half? And, you know.
Well, it's light, but it's also, there's a lot going on in that movie. It's a light on the surface, but there's a lot going on. There's racial stuff, there's injustice, there's poverty, the depression, you know, it's kind of deceptive.
Imagine this. So we shot in LA the Ku Klux Klan rally, and we had a drill team, and most of the guys in the outfits were black, you know, because it's a drill team. But the funniest thing you've ever seen is we shot it just in Van Nuys in this big open field at night. And you can imagine we're just under the Van Nuys airport, the planes flying in, seeing this giant rally. People must have been like, what the hell am I flying into? It was insane.
It was bizarre doing that. I remember being next to you guys on that hill and us like rolling over together and then rolling. Yeah. And I was like, I was like really scared, I have to say.
Yeah.
It was really weird.
Disturbing.
When is the last time, one last question, I promise everybody I'll let you go. When is the last time any of the three of you have seen it? Because I just watched the movie. So when is have any of the three of you seen it recently?
At Lincoln Center with George and Tim a few years ago.
Last time you saw, I saw maybe part of it. I think I saw, you know, like the last 10 minutes of it. I was flipping channels and I just stopped and watched it just because I thought it was fun to watch. But I haven't seen it together since Lincoln's been.
Watching that movie, everything in it, you know, I'm loving the movie, but that Klan scene, I think that got Roger the Oscar nomination that year, because I watch it and I try to figure out how it was done. It's interesting to hear John say it scared him, because it's scary, it's effective. There's humor in it, but it's serious and it's scary. It's very, very effective.
But when you start singing "Oh Death," it gets dark very quick. You know?
Yeah, the movie has George is right about the lightness, but I think there's a deep, deep poignancy in the movie as well. The "I'll Fly Away" montage is heartbreaking to me.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and the music is that serious mountain music. There's some deep stuff and all that. So, listen, gentlemen, you've been very generous with your time today. So appreciated. I'm going to go have the Casamigos now.
Thanks for getting us all together, because it's fun to see you.
Great to see you both.